Good morning, peoples. I just thought I would share something with you that has been on my mind probably this last week, and it's something that could be helpful, especially for artists, to do with painting commissions. And you could talk about that for hours. It's really nice to be painting again, and I hope you're enjoying me putting up some actual art instead of all the logistics going on around me. I wanted to make just a short little clip about commissions. Actually, it's only really possible to feel like you're an actual, creative artist with commissions when the client gives you lots and lots of room to work with. People have a set idea of what they want. That's why they've commissioned you, because they've seen something you like. But it's very tempting for your client to dictate exactly what it is they want, and it's very tempting for the artist to fall into the trap of being scared and doing exactly what that client wants, because after all, they're paying you to do something that they have in their own mind based on your previous work. I was talking to another artist friend of mine, and about this particular subject of commissions, which we both have always struggled with. And nearly every artist I know, not absolutely every single one of them, but most of them have the same issue, and that is the concern that as soon as there's a commission involved, you're kind of compromising your creative self. Now, that would depend on what kind of artist you are, of course, because there are artists that are more, I suppose, like an artisan, who, just like someone who was making a table for a client, or a fine bit of wrought iron, and it would be based on a set design. So there's definitely artists amongst us that are more comfortable working with set designs. And it's just that word, it's just semantics, is what more so. We should throw the word art away and say it's more so probably the base of the inspiration. And that's pretty hard to define. To talk about commissions at any sort of length really does come back to how you paint. And I know that is as varied as there are different personalities. Someone that paints unique one-off pieces every time could very well find it difficult to replicate something for a client that has seen one of those one-off pieces and wants another one like that. And yet, strangely, that usually comes down to confidence in the artist. And what I mean by that is the artist so sure of themselves that they think that whatever it is that they create, the client will like. And I don't think there's too many clients out there that would be so naive as to put that forward as the brief. But what I mean by confidence is that if you are a more of an inventing artist, that each of your pieces is invented and made up as you go, then even so, you will have a style. But the best way to go about that, if you are highly creative and you create one-off pieces and don't feel like you can replicate to meet a brief, is to say to the client that the client is not obligated. Don't take a deposit. The client is not obligated to take the piece. And just make sure that the painting that you paint is something that could be sold on the general market. And that way you're covering yourself. It does sound like a little bit of a cop-out, but it's actually an integral way to go about engaging with a client. If the client doesn't feel that they have to buy the piece, then if they're not happy with it, they're not, there's no bad blood. And I've got to tell you that I have always made that the basic premise of every single commission I have created. As long as I'm not painting, and this is why I don't take on paintings that are very specific to someone's personal affairs, apart from a few dog portraits. But mostly I won't do that because I don't give the guarantee at the very start, and it actually works out much better. It takes the weight off everybody. Just make sure that what you paint is able to be put on the general market if it's not accepted. Whereas someone who's painting, I guess you could say, more realistic type landscapes, seascapes or something along those lines, could very easily transfer that skill or artisanship into painting something that the client wants. For example, paint me Geeky Gorge, based on that style you're using there. There's, other artists that are painting, I'm thinking of a couple of well-known ones who paint particular, I guess, stylistic works of women or something else. And again, that would not be that hard for that artist to simply just make a few adjustments, like, perhaps model it on a woman with a particular hair colour or something like that, and then carry on. And some of those artists really like commissions because they are kept within the boundaries due to the client's expectations. But there's so many artists that begrudgingly take on commissions. It ends up being more about the money because, it's it feels like a guaranteed safe bet, and they don't like being told what to do, whereas it doesn't have to be like that. So commissions are just such a minefield of different opinions and feelings, and I guess the best way that I suggest for artists to take on the whole topic is to be selective about them and just I'll get to this later on, but it does really come down to one very important factor, and that is you've really got to know yourself and what you like and what you don't like around you doing your work. If you're working from the imagination and conjuring up ideas completely out of things or creating things that don't exist, then your client could get a very big shock. And I have met artists that use that exact moment that they feel great discomfort over, they're getting impatient with the fact that they've taken on a commission, and they it's really dangerous to at that point decide that, oh, okay, I'm sick of doing predictable things, I'm going to break free. Well, that isn't the time to do it at that point with a commission. Do it when you're doing, your freelance work, when you're putting it out there as something new. I think that's probably the key point. What I really do enjoy about commissions is really just the opportunity that I sometimes get to know the client a little better, and yet keeping a little bit of distance between you and the client is really important. So I don't always get to know the client at all, but it is good to have some sort of dialogue with them, and maybe it's even better to just be written about what it is that's driving them to ask you to create that work. I think that's probably the key point into tapping into their passion and seeing if it can trigger your inspiration. But with these current commissions, the client gave me they seemed to be deliberately obtuse about what they wanted, apart from just telling me, which this is the perfect brief, some of the works they really loved and the general feeling. That was the key point for me, is the feeling they were after, and they were able to negotiate that within themselves, that it was about a feeling they wanted. And in this case it was a sort of a dark, the colours were talked about, and where I had captured that in other paintings, but it was the moodiness, and even down to not having a detailed background and this simple background, and they recognised that without distraction in the background, the emphasis goes on to the characters in the painting. Now, I've rarely actually done commissions like that because it's actually can be quite challenging for the client and confronting, but again, that just comes down to the type of people that we are. For example, it's always intriguing if a client shares with you the space that their painting is going to go into, and in this particular case, the setting was pretty much how I would have my house or setting, so I could see that we probably have similar taste and mood and values about what we surround ourselves with. So that's not meant to be a judgment of one way or the other. It's just that I can see why that kind of dramatic painting, which I prefer to do, had some appeal to them. So anyway, back to the commissions and the struggle with doing them. I just always come back to knowing yourself as a person, and as an artist, there is no more important job than really coming to terms with who you are. And I have so much information I want to share with you about that, because I think that's actually the key point. Understanding who you are in order to actually get the best out of your life as an artist, and to really nail down what your, inverted commas, style or mode is. And to me, that's actually the key point to being happy as an artist, is to understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it. And it's based on just such a simple premise, and that is know thyself. We can all, as artists, paint or in a way of someone else, or be inspired by another artist. That's fine. That's just how humans are. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we continue down the road of someone else's style without altering it to our own true self, all you'll end up with is just a sense of emptiness or incompleteness, or even just sort of like a default position where you feel like vanilla. Well, actually, I quite like vanilla. What it is that you don't really break through into something that's unique unless you actually let yourself be unique. And that involves sometimes compromising what other people like. But somehow or another, I've always found that the more I be myself, while it might not be super popular with everybody, it really does attract the people I want to attract. And I think that's probably, that's pretty much know yourself 101, isn't it? I think that the greatest amount of time I spent on anything through my, I guess you could say, formative years, was trying to understand who I was. And that has helped me enormously, because I'm pretty clear on it now. Even though I learn something every single day that is part of who I am. I'm a curious person. I'd love to talk more about the models I've used for that, but I will in more posts in the future. We use different methods of knowing and learning who we are, and you can just accept yourself. But the trouble with just not getting any help with understanding when you fall into a pit, because falling into a pit is the key way of knowing who you are. It's not the strength that you need to observe, it's the weaknesses. And in that shadow is where, when you're dark, when you're down, you darken down because you don't feel like yourself. You feel like you've lost something, and you have. You've lost your way. If you understand that darkness and examine it, you can actually find your way out, because you can work out the triggers that have set you down that rabbit hole. That's the kind of stuff I did a lot of study of. And I used, my main principal tool was the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs type indicator. I am a bit of a champion of that, and I've used it for about close to 30 years to help me understand the world and other people. And I tell you what, out of all the things I've done, including a master's degree in analytical psychology or Jungian psychology and millions of hours of research about knowing yourself, that's probably the most effective tool I have ever come across. I can talk about that more another time, but so I just wanted to do that little touch upon commissions for now, and why and how you can work out whether you feel crappy about them or good about them, and it is dependent on your nature as to how you will feel. Like, not everyone is going to be the same. Just to recap, I am the type of person I am. I love challenges, and not so much this differentiation of word. It's not about adventure seeking, it's about exploring. And I remember discussing this with someone and they said, "Oh, you're an adventurer." And I said, no, I don't really care for adventure for its own sake. It's not about, going down a raft to get a thrill down some rapids. It's about exploring new territory, and sometimes that feels like when you know yourself, you're exploring the same old territory, but it's not true. When you're right in the heart of who you are, you're free to actually expand your potential. So that's why knowing yourself is so great. When you head down the wrong path, or a path that's not really who you are, you just know it. You can feel it. You can feel that you're pushing poo uphill. Nearly ready. Good morning, girls. Hello. Hello. Good morning. Hello, ladies. Hello. What's going on? Who's that? That's Chai, who wants to eat me. Whoops. See these? These are mealworms. Chai, eat the mealworm. So see those mealworms? That's what Klaus Schwab wants you to eat, and the World Economic Forum. They reckon that's the food for you. They're trying to trick you so you won't eat a lamb chop. I guess, ow! See? They're eating me. They'll eat you if you lie down. So life is pretty much about who's going to eat who, I think. Look at her. She's using me as a napkin.